All right. This is an eye toward the occult with me, your host, who shall remain nameless. So let's just go for it. So what I want to talk about now is something that I think is really important and often overlooked or perhaps misunderstood in occult circles, and particularly by people who have some academic interest in the occult or are maybe very much near the point of beginning a practice. I think for those people, there's maybe some confusion about, just not the dark side of magic, but just things to be aware of before getting mixed up in this business. Because, look, we have to, take a step back and step away from the cultural context of these things becoming more popular, discussions of higher consciousness, things like psychedelics, meditation-type practices, the shamanistic practices of other cultures. It's, we have to be careful. We have to take a step back from all the ways in which these preconceived ideas can get mixed up in each other and tweaked over time or in pop culture or just in one's own mind. And we have to take a step back and think, okay, well, wait a minute, if this is really like a thing, some technology or some tool that a human being can use to manipulate the world around them, right? We have to imagine that if this is something real, if it actually is possible to, by way of even just a small handful of some of these practices, warp the fundamental principles or curry their favor. It's a hell of a thing to think. So, we have to take a step back and look at it in that light, divorced from, is this kind of a fun thing to play with or a neat idea, or is this maybe could become a cool new part of my style or identity? That we have to grow up and start thinking of this as a practical matter and as a matter of significance if there's something to it. And so to that end, I want to offer some practical precautions before, so to speak, before one dips one's fingers in the black, inky pool of the void. The waters of chaos, the waters of the infinite. Therein lie monsters. So, let's be careful. And so, how can we do that? Well, there's a few things that seem, to really that are really important to be careful of. Okay. Now I'm speaking now from a place of personal practice, but also from a place of the experiences of the practice of other magicians, witches, and occultists. This, I suppose, some of this as well will include experiences from those and other spiritual traditions who have spiritual traditions which have practices with similar mechanisms, outcomes, aims, or intentions. And if we can learn lessons from their failed experiments, then we should, right? So, okay, so let's get to the practical precautions. So the first thing to be wary of, I think, is, well, I think the first thing you have to do is you have to be scientific, right? And that means you have to adhere to the scientific method, right? Observation, experiment, hypothesis. And there's a few other things in there that would help, going for verifiability, falsifiability, something, an outcome that's material and concrete and quantifiable is good, right? Now, you can use magic, for enlightenment, for higher states of consciousness, or whatever, or for better, I don't know, more feelings of self-worth or something. I don't know, but, you can use it for those things, but I think when you're starting out, it's really, really important to... if you really are going to figure out how to, ultimately you're trying to get this to work for you, right? And so before that, you have to figure out how it works. And, you want to make as few missteps as possible and get as quickly as you can to the making this work for you kind of thing, to the mastery stage. You can be a master carpenter, you can be a master magician, okay? So, you want to be scientific at first, because that's the way to, and when I say that, I mean in the way you carry out your first few magical experiments, right? So whatever the intended outcome is of these experiments, you want to, be able to keep track of their success or failure. You want to, like one of the first things I did, I think actually the very first magical working I ever did was for a very specific amount of money, because I figured, well, if you can use it to get money and that ends up working, then you can use it for anything else you want, right? What's material, what's measurable, what's concrete, what's really going to prove to somebody that this works? Well, okay, if they can get money, man, how can you argue with money in your pocket? And then I went for a specific amount. So, things like that, or, trying to manifest very specific material changes, like you want to, I don't know, start getting work on time, I don't know. I mean, even that's risky because it's kind of a mental thing, right? Like, for your first few experiments, you want to make it as scientific as possible, something that, it's going to be as obvious as possible whether that intended outcome actually obtained or not. You want to prove to yourself beyond a shadow of a doubt in those first few experiments that it works, or that you're not, if it fails, that it doesn't, and that this isn't for you, or that you're not doing it right, something. But you want to, as you go along, you'll find that the power of your belief, the precision of the focus of your will, the purity of your consciousness, all these things are going to be key factors in the success or failure of performing an operation, okay? Making magic work. So, because of that, if you can be really, really kind of hard-nosed about it the first few times you do it, then when you prove it to yourself, it'll be really powerful, and it'll really, you won't be able to doubt it after that. And so when you do start doing it for the more airy stuff, like, higher states of higher consciousness or whatever, it'll be your faith will be there. I mean, I hate to use that word, but it's more just like you'll have a really clear sense of how this works, or how it kind of worked those first few times, but not quite in the way you wanted or whatever. I think those having material outcomes, concrete material outcomes, and doing simple rituals and trying to distill them into simple steps that you follow, to the letter, right? But you keep it simple and straightforward and measurable. That's just how to set yourself up for success, so that if things do get out of hand later, or you do have to make a few mistakes along the way or whatever, it'll be with that kind of stuff instead of fucking with your own head or something, or what, you just be careful and be scientific about it. Be open-minded but also skeptical, right? Be open-minded in the right kind of way. Keep the attitude of the scientist in the laboratory who's discovered or potentially discovered or thinks he might have discovered an alien ray gun. And you might be able to make this thing work for you one day, but for now you got to do some really, really simple experiments to just figure out how it works so you don't blow up the world or kill a bunch of people or something. Okay? So that's the first practical precaution, is be scientific. Be scientific. And if you can carry that spirit through into the later stages of your practice as well, it's just going to make things better for you. You're just going to be able to make your magic work faster or find that magical style that works the best for you quicker. Or you'll be able to achieve results on a quicker timeline or with less effort. Whatever. The more you keep that kind of mindset. And you want to keep track of your successes and failures as well, and of the different ways in which things come to you when they do start to manifest, so that you can keep an awareness of how much control you are starting to get, if you ever really can, over this magical energy. Now, the second practical precaution is sort of for the next stage, for the middle stage, if you will. It's like once you've gotten past your initial 3 to 5 experiments, operations, successful operations performed, then, it's going to start to really hit you that, I'm not going to be rid of this, and wait a minute, this might have been a trip, or this might have been fun, but, or this might have even been a little strange and wild, but holy shit, how do you unlearn what you've learned, right? How do maybe you changed your reality a bit too much, and it's making you a little dizzy. So you got to be careful there too, because the more scientific you are at the beginning, once you do make it, and it will work. It always works. But once you get really good, then you're going to feel like, man, maybe I could go really far with this. How far should I go? What even is the right interpretation to give to the results of these experiments? Is this power moral or beyond morality, or what? Is there a God that is at the helm of all this? You can start to go a little mad. So the second practical precaution is to find some way of banishing madness. Now, you can do a ritual for it, but I think it's helpful to find a non-magical way, to some more mundane way, to cope with feelings that it's all a bit too much, man. Holy shit, I wish someone had told me about this. I wish someone had prepared me for this or something. There's going to be just something that makes you really feel the pressure. And you have to have your ace in the hole. You have to have something in your back pocket that's always going to work, right? To stave off the madness. Now, I think, again, this is just drawing from my own experiences and the experiences of other practitioners. But I think for me, if I try and tell myself something or find some nice little, it'll all be okay or whatever, right? Well, the problem is, what if the magic is teaching me that thing is not always true? Then I'm in trouble. So I think you want to find some non-cognitive or non-conceptual thing that's going to really effectively stave off the madness. Now, for me, it's laughter.